Welcome to the Eye on the Illini, folks. This was this was ugly. We had an opportunity there where the Illini had a very bad matchup. Will coach said it after the game. You know, you can't go small against us, and Illinois didn't have Tomislav Ivisic, and it was a horrible night to not have him. Anybody who thinks he's soft or he doesn't do much for Illinois' defense, take a look at this game. I would beg to differ. Second thing is, Illinois didn't play very well. On top of being in a bad matchup, you cannot have a duo of Kylan Boswell and Jacusiones. They were sitting together on a combined 12 turnovers against a team that is very athletic, that scored 27 points off of turnovers compared to Illinois' 4. That gap was 23, and Illinois lost by 21. And so Illinois did not play very well. And then the other thing I'll bring off is, you wonder if Jeremiah Fears had kept his commitment, and if Amani Hansberry hadn't left. You got 2 additional players. The team's a little deeper. Now, it's not my NIL money, so there is that. But, boy, I'd love to have those 2 bodies around, and then you can face things when you have an injury or a sickness. Ked, I don't think the season's over. I don't think that it's time to panic, but Illinois got their butt kicked tonight by the Maryland team that I think UI and Brad thought was going to be pretty good at the start of the season.
Well, I'm going to start. I've been thinking, what do I start with? I'm going to go with this one. They're not winning the Big Ten. I didn't care if they won or not. That's not happening now. Okay. And you have 3, in my opinion, 2.5 horrible losses. I'll say the half because Northwestern is a good team at home. Horrible losses. Tonight you got spanked. It was the only national game on TV, and you got embarrassed. You went to Michigan State Sunday and lost and moved up in the polls, and then turned right around a few days later to probably put yourselves in a position where you're going to drop out. What's frustrating to me, what's tough about this loss, is that you now had a potential to be a 2 seed. Going into the night, I think you were 3 or 4. You're sitting at a 5. You better run the table, win the Big Ten tournament, and hope, because going into that tournament as a 5 seed, you know who you're going to have to play. And it's sad. The effort tonight was uninspired. I have not seen that from a Brad Underwood team in a long time. I have not. Guys just going down there. It was a lot of hero basketball in the end. The ball stuck in certain players' hands. And, Mike, I'm going to close it with this, and then we can just open this up to people who want to ask questions, or you do this podcast. There's I don't want to say this. There's a person I know who's very, very close to the program, and we talked for a long time, and one of the things he said to me was this, and tonight he was right, and I said, you know what? You mentioned this to me a month and a half ago. You're right. He said if there was one player on this roster, one guy you could not afford to lose, it was Ivisic. He said you could lose KJ, and you could have, because if you go back to Sunday's game, they missed 10 free throws. They were 4 for 18 or 15 from 3 or 5, whatever it was from 3. And you could have won the game. Now, people start giving me this mathematical talk like I can't count. I don't understand mathematics. No, Ivisic was not going to be the great equalizer, but I know damn well they wouldn't have scored 53 points in the paint, and I know the looks that they got in the paint would have been different. If Ivisic would have scored, he was another offensive threat to them. He is the one guy on this roster, the one single guy that you can't lose. You can get away with it if a team's not executing well. You can hide him for a few minutes, but for a whole game, you saw tonight how important he is. And I've said that because he's long. He can tip the ball out. He gets deflections where they don't count as rebounds, and he's really good at tipping the ball to my breast. And also, Mike, he's an excellent passer. I'm not saying Illinois would have won tonight. I don't know that. I'm not I Dream of Jeannie, and I'm not her husband, whatever the hell that man's name was, Tony. But the bottom line is this. They got spanked at home. It was embarrassing. And there are some guys, to me right now, since you can't win the Big Ten, there'd be some hard lessons. The turnovers, the selfish play, it was embarrassing tonight.
Well, and look, I'll be honest with you. Ivisic, great player. I don't think he makes a difference because this team, this has always been my kind of whine that you and Brad have had to listen to. But you are what you are, and right now this is not a good shooting team. They can be hot on certain nights, but they're not a consistent good shooting team. And you certainly, if you're going to play without your center, you better spread the court and you better hit some threes. They were 6 for 28 from the three, shooting a blistering 21.4%. They were 37.7 from the floor. And I kind of get that because you got two bigs that make it hard to score on the inside. They were outscored in the paint 62-34. And the points off of turnovers, as I said earlier, was 27-4. Rickhouse didn't score, had 5 boards. Boswell, 14 points, 9 rebounds. So that was a positive overall.
How many turnovers did he have?
But he had 5 turnovers.
Thank you.
Morez, he had 5 points. He had 2 rebounds, no offensive rebounds. Rough night for him. 4 personal fouls. Trey White had 9 points. He had 6 boards, couple turnovers. And, of course, Yakusionis, 21 points, 7 rebounds, 7 assists. But the 7 turnovers came at tough times, particularly when Illinois was coming close, just very careless with the ball. Kerry Booth had 3 points. And of course, he had 1 rebound, so it was nice to see him get out there. Gibbs Lawhorn had 15 points. He was 5 for 8. He had 4 rebounds. He didn't have a turnover. Will Riley clearly didn't feel good. He had 3 assists, though, while he was out there, no points. Jake Davis had 3 points, 1 rebound, and fouled out. So it was a rough game for the Illini. I think Maryland, quite honestly, Maryland outplayed them. And Maryland had bigs that Illinois could not stop. And Ked, I'm sorry, we saw it last year with Coleman Hawkins against Maryland. But when you have unstoppable bigs, makes your team look pretty puny. And we saw the other side of it for years when we had Kofi.
Puny reminds me of the Incredible Hulk, and that's exactly what they looked like. They looked really puny tonight. They just looked outmanned. I've never seen that. And I'm going to go back to what I said at halftime. They went to a zone, got 2 stops. One of them was an air ball, and they made a 3 and they got out of it. 1 possession, you're down by 8 or 9 points. Live with it. Now, and there was 1 possession, so people are going to say, well, Ked, they did this. Well, I'm going to give an example. They were in a 3-2 zone at one point, Mike, that you called. I mean, I'm really sorry, guys, but if you're in college, I know at least your AAU team, your high school team, you have played some kind of zone before. They went to a zone once, and then, I'm just going to say, Trey White gave up a layup. The purpose of a zone is to keep him out of the paint. Now, I will say this. The zone offenses now are a hell of a lot better than they were in the 1800s when I played. I get that. Okay, but damn, you got one principle. That's why you go into a zone or you're trying to hide foul trouble. And they didn't do that tonight. And I give them credit. I wish they would have stayed with it a little bit, but they didn't do that. The turnovers tonight were inexcusable. And I'm going to tell you, we thought coming into this season, this was going to be a great 3-point shooting team. Potentially, they could be, but they're not. And if you want us to give you the statistics while you're on this podcast and you're driving home and you're watching it, we have access to it. I don't care how good it looks sometimes. When was the last time you saw them just shot the snot out of the basketball? Was it the Oregon game? because I'm trying to remember. They've won games since then. Because I just said to you a few minutes ago, if they make 38% of the three-pointers against Michigan State, they still beat them. You're not going to beat teams, and you're shooting 21% from the three. 6 for 28. Maryland was 3 for 12. Again, analytics by Felicia. I don't care about them. You just got beasted by guys that were inside 2 points, and your three-point shooting wasn't there. And if that's not going to happen, good teams better find a way to score. And they didn't do that. And I know hopefully they're going to work on it. I do. I guess if from a personal standpoint, not from an analytics standpoint, I just saw a lot of hero basketball. Very disappointing to me tonight. When they move the basketball, Mike, they're fun to watch. That ball stuck and guys trying to go one-on-one and get theirs. Not that they were trying to get their points, but it wasn't in the framework of the offense. And that didn't look good to me tonight.
Yeah, it looked to me, to be real honest with you, it looked to me a little bit like guys lost a little bit of trust in themselves, in their teammates and their offense. And I think they almost felt like, well, nothing's working, so I'm going to have to do it. And that's never a good thing. And to me, you go back and you look at this game, the turnovers, we can't go over that enough because a turnover stops your possession. So that you lose potentially 2 or 3 points. And then if they score 2 or 3 points, a turnover can be a 6-point change for you. And that's a huge thing. And Illinois had too many of those that actually turned into at least a 4-point swing. And then the other part that happens is you can extend your possession with offensive rebounds. And Illinois, they played better in the second half. They got 6 of their 8 in the second half. But Illinois didn't extend their own possessions like we're used to. Now, when that's kind of understandable when you're dealing with you're dealing with Reese and Queen, so there you get that. But again, Illinois just struggled with Ivisic being out, and then you have a cold 3-point shooting. If you would have told me before the game that Tomislav's not playing and Illinois is not going to shoot 22% from the three, I would say we're going to get blown out.
Well, yeah. And they, again, I don't want to say they were, they were blown out. Mike, I don't know the last time, and I can't remember this. I don't. When was the last time Illinois went through a game and didn't have a dunk? They were 16 to 24 for layups. Just awful. I mean, just really, really not good basketball tonight. And, Coach Underwood talked about the layover from Michigan State, and it's his job. It is, but damn, these are Division I college basketball players. They know better. I mean, just the layups alone. I mean, like, I'm not going to call one guy out, but when I say this, you're going to know who in the hell I'm talking about. We have one guy who starts miss 4 or 5 layups a game. Yeah. I mean, just blatant layups. You can't.
And he's also doing an incredible job on the offensive board for his size, it's just like the weirdest combination of all time.
I want to lay up. I'm going to tell you right now. Here's my philosophy as a coach. I'm sorry. You make layups and free throws, you're going to always have a chance to win games. That is the easiest shot in the world to make, Mike. If you can't make that, and there's going to be some nights where maybe one don't go in, but you can't win for every game. And then there's some guys out there, they need to play the percentage, okay? They really do. And I don't understand why these dudes do not understand what their roles are. I played for a guy, and I'm telling you right now, people laugh when I say this. If you couldn't shoot, and if you shot a jump shot, a three-pointer in a game, you didn't play anymore. We got guys out there who are probably shooting 20% from three, still jacking up threes. It's not a good shot. It's great if it goes in, but it's not, statistically speaking, it's not a good shot. So to me, man, it's not panic mode, but it's frustration mode because, and it's the season, people are asking if the season's over. You're missing another player tonight. And I'm going to say it again. If Ivisic is a huge piece, if they were in the NCAA tournament right now, and they were playing in the final 8. And if they ask me right now to bet your truck, kid, which one of the guys you rather have not play, Ivisic or Kasperis, I'm going to say Kasperis. I want Ivisic playing, man. That guy is a difference maker. Even if he doesn't score, he's going to make it defensively tough for people to at least think, hey, in the post. I'm telling you, Reese and Queen, they laughed. They just looked in the post and thought there's no way in the world. And God bless Jake Davis.
He tries. I'll give him. His effort's always there, but
yeah. Don't put him in that position.
Yeah, I agree.
Mike, you've talked about this a number of times. Booth, develop him. Well, tonight you needed him, and he looked raw. I mean, I'll tell you, he has some athleticism, but he hasn't played a lot. Can't fault that kid 1 minute, and I'm not going to fault him 1 minute. He hasn't seen the court a lot. He went out there and he battled, but I would have put him out there a lot longer than Jake, at least in that position, because at least it makes the two Maryland Terrapin bigs tougher to shoot over the top. They probably still would have made it, but I wouldn't have just gave it to him. Jake Davis fouled out because he was trying to guard guys that are 5 inches than him. That didn't work with DeMonte, and it doesn't work now. You can't do that anymore. These guys now are skilled, man. Before, the rule of thumb was you get a big guy, you could put a smaller guy under him to get underneath of him. You can't do that anymore. These big dudes they're crafty. They can put the ball on the floor and like they say, put you in the spin cycle. They can
shoot the long jump shot a lot of times. Yeah.
Yes.
Well, I tell you, it's interesting, and again, I chalk this up partially to a bad matchup. I think I gotta be honest with you, Maryland scares me, and I didn't like them for a matchup for Illinois. In fact, I thought they were almost between them and Michigan are the two toughest matchups for Illinois, and because of the size and the ability of their big guys. Now, Michigan's big guys, I think, are less athletic, but they are more basketball-y. But they can handle the ball a little better, and they can shoot better. They're not the athletes that Maryland has. But I thought those are the two worst teams in the Big Ten, and that's the worst night in the world to have Ivisic out of the game.
Mm-hmm.
I thought it was going to be a tough game, but I didn't think, I was hoping that Illinois would at least shoot their average. If they shoot 30%, at least they make a few more threes and they end up, but again, you can't have the turnovers. There was a lot of things that fell apart tonight on a night that they couldn't fall apart. You had to shoot your threes well. You had to take care of the ball. You had to get some offensive rebounds. I'm not saying it's easy to do. That's the problem with a lot of fans. Like, well, if I was out there, I would have got 9 offensive rebounds. No, you wouldn't have. You wouldn't even be out there. But the fact of the matter is, what needs to be done. Maryland's a pretty good team. I don't think their coach is that good, but I think Maryland's got some talent. And Illinois had a bad night to have a bad night.
Well, they did. They had a bad night. And I'll tell you what, Mike, we talk about all these numbers. Illinois got out rebounded tonight. Again, this is back to Ivisic. They got out rebounded 40-36. Offensive rebounds. I mean, that's just something that Illinois has done really well. Again, it's not time to drive off the bridge or to say, hey, you know what? Is it spring football season or whatever? It's not time to panic yet. It's just not. I think the team is a really good team. I think the schedule is going to should be favorable to them. But again, you right now as a fan, if you ask me my opinion, not that you did, but I'm going to give it to you. Hope to go to Big Ten tournament. If you won a championship, hopefully you can win that. I want to advance to the final. If they got to the final 8 again, I'd be happy. Sweet 16, I'd be happy. There are just too many things right now that are going wrong for them. Injuries, guys fatigued. You had Will Riley coming off one of his best performances. He, like you said, he was clearly sick tonight. I mean, he just had no gas. Kudos to that kid for gutting it out. But I'm going to say this, I'm not going to get off this podcast without giving Lawhorn some credit. This guy is a gamer. He is competitive. He is a fighter. I would love to see this kid get 25 minutes. I don't care who they're playing, because one thing he's going to give you is effort. He's not going to miss 40 layups. That's not going to happen from him. And he's going to play hard.
Yep. Sturdy, we got you on here. The gist that we are pretty much chalking this up to is not having a Ivisic was bad, but then when you don't have a Ivisic against a team like Maryland, it's worse. And then when you can't hit a three-pointer, that makes it even worse. And then when you turn over the ball a lot, man, that's a bad combination to do on a night like tonight.
Yeah, it was pretty awful. Illinois lost 12 games at home by 21 or more points in the history of the program. So this is epically bad. Really poor performance. They did a lot of things that were out of character and dumb. I hate to say that, but just silly things, silly turnovers, lack of court awareness, just things that shouldn't happen happened repeatedly. They got a couple of tough breaks and they had to battle through them, and then they didn't have Ivisic, and so you didn't have any depth up front. That's tough, but I will say I do agree with Ken. I thought Draven Gibbs-Lawhorn was great. I thought he really battled. He competed. I understand that there's going to be he can't play all the time, but he got 22 minutes tonight. I'd like to see that continue because he does play hard and he can score. In this first half, he makes plays. You know what I mean? I thought really he made some offensive plays that I know he banked one in, but it still counted as 3. So I was happy with the way he competed. I thought Illinois just got they got punked inside. There's no other way to say it. You have 62 points in the paint, you're probably going to lose almost every time.
Yeah.
And that's just the reality of it. You can't, and they couldn't stop them. Now at the end of the day, I will say this: I'm not sure everybody's talking about the defense. In the half court, if you take away all the pick twos that they gave up on turning it over, that was like 14 of their points were just throwaways where they just gave them the ball and they went to the other end and scored. And it wasn't like they were putting a ton of pressure on the guards. Guards just made bad decisions and bad plays, got picked. I think KJ got it taken from him at least twice, just right there in the middle of the floor. Guys poke it away and go score at the other end. And that's, you give up 14 points, that's not your defense right there on those possessions. Those are just points you're giving up. Well, now you start putting it in, the defense is a little bit better when you don't do that. Illinois had, I think, fast break points were 17-3. And that's just that's 14 more points is a different game.
Well, Brad, and points off of turnovers were 27-4. You can't do that. And then when you couple that with a blistering 21.4 from the 3-point line, if like Ked and I were talking in the early part of the podcast, if you would have told me that Illinois was going to shoot 21%, Ivisic was not going to play, or 21% from the 3, and they were going to give up 62 points in the lane, I would wonder if Illinois would make it to 50.
I didn't know if they finished the game. Might be a running clock.
Or have Brad pass out and. Well, and I'll tell you, the other thing is, folks, when you talk about, and this is easy for me to say as a non-wealthy American, but when you talk about putting money into NIL, the NIL wars will never stop anymore. And if Illinois had another $1 million, for this year, maybe you can afford a Jeremiah Fears and an Amani Hansberry. And you can influence a Ty Rogers to play, and then you've got 3 more bodies for a night when you are sick. But the fact of the matter is that this was a bad moment for Illinois, but there was enough controllables in terms of not hitting open shots, being lazy with the ball, that Illinois had plenty that they could point to beyond being. But beyond one player not being healthy and a couple others feeling a little under the weather.
Yeah, no question. There was a play in the second half there a couple times. Illinois had Boswell comes down, they got 3-on-2. They're down by 3. And the next, and so here it's early in the second half. They're down by 3. They got a chance. They made a little mini run here. And he gets picked from behind. They go the other way and they score. Yep. And those are those little plays that really change the game. You got 3-on-2, you get a clean look. I think KJ had it once. They were down 3. He got picked, or he turned it over or something, and then he missed a layup. Did he get, so, and then I think he turned it over the next possession too. It was like 3 plays in a row. It's like, holy cow. So those are all things that, that would have changed the game, because if you tie that game, you're back in it and you have a chance. I don't think Illinois led since they led 11-10 in the first half. After that, I don't think they ever led. And so if you get back and you tie it, the crowd gets into it. Everybody's, up. Instead, you turn it over and it's like they're going the other way and everybody's down. And so those are the kind of things. So this was as bad as they played, and I know they lost by 21. The opportunities were still there, despite all of that, with just playing a little bit smarter in those situations. The other thing I want to say, I just want to get this off my chest. The analytics Illinois plays by are not going to be effective against a team like Maryland.
Ked went through that, but go ahead, Brad.
So they defend the rim with their big guys. So they have Queen and Reese at the rim defending it. 2 guys with great length, so forth. Their guards are going to pressure your guards and not allow them to take threes. So when they go to the rim, there's a 6'10", 6'11" guy standing there just waiting. And so what happens is, what's open, and they did it to start the second half. I don't know if you remember. They were rolling, I think Boswell multiple times. He rolled to the middle, and they got some easy buckets. They missed a layup there, too. Another problem they had, an uncontested one. But they started adjusting to that. But they're playing out of that mid-range because they're leaving. They were basically doing to Illinois what Illinois does to everybody else. Exactly. Or tries to do to everybody else.
Yep.
So,
well,
it obviously worked.
One of the things, I'm going to go back to the turnover when they were down by 3. Bill Rafferty was my favorite. He was really trying to be politically correct. When Boswell got picked at half court or 3/4 court, he made the comment, how do you not know and understand that they're coming from behind? That should have never happened. I don't even care about the old cry wolf, yell wolf, wolf. You have to know that. You just know. And KJ, I don't know if I'm not a doctor, but I can tell you tonight, to me, he looked sick. That kid shot 5 air balls tonight. Not because he was sick. I'm not making excuses for him. He didn't look healthy to me tonight at all. I mean, maybe what's going on with Big T.I., I don't know. Maybe it's passed along to him, but for the most part, I've never seen him shoot that many air balls. He was careless with the ball. He looked like he did at the beginning of the season against Ole Miss, but a lot of that had to do with Maryland. They picked him a little bit, when he got sloppy with it. But, Brad, before you got on the air, and we may disagree with this, and I said this, and I'm still going to stand by it. Losing Ivisic is big to me. He is he's the one guy that you cannot lose. You saw Sunday when they played against Michigan State, they survived without KJ. Even in that performance, they got spanked without Ivisic. Because even at least he's long enough to get rebounds, tip it out if other people can't get it. And he doesn't foul a lot. I'm not saying they would have won the game, but they would have lost by 21 if he would have played. I'm sorry, it just wouldn't have happened.
Well, this is also a terrible matchup to not have him. I mean, if you're playing a team that played small and have small guys, you can get away with it maybe. But you can't get away with it against a team that plays 2 bigs most of the time. You're not going to be successful unless you spread them out and you make threes. Well, if you shoot 21% from 3, guess what? You're not going to win against that team. So, yeah, I totally agree with you, Ken. And Ivisic, I think Ivisic and KJ are 2 guys they have. I thought with KJ tonight, his issue was he didn't have his comfort there. Ivisic is his comfort guy. He's the pressure release out there on the top of the key. He's a guy who can pass. He takes pressure. And so I think KJ got sped up. He's trying to do too much. He's trying to make plays that aren't there. And so he just gets a little out of control. That was the most out of control I've seen him all year playing the game. And it wasn't because of the Maryland pressure. It was because he sped himself up, I think, knowing that he didn't have that, and also that they were behind most of the night. And so that was a big part of it. So, yeah. It's a rough night when you don't have that guy. Ivisic is also a really good connector and passer and things like that. So they missed him on the defensive end, they missed him on the offensive end. But had they lost, let's say they would have lost that game 78-74, I would have been like, hey, they didn't have Ivisic, but they got destroyed. So there's more to it than just lose to him.
Oh, for sure. And I would tell you, Brett, and to your point, there was a couple of times I thought personally KJ looked a little bit frustrated. He was through, they won the 2 game with him and Perez. Maryland wasn't guarding him. And he's used to a guy that can pick and pop. They didn't even look at him. They dorked him the whole night. And I know he can shoot it. I'm telling you, I know he can. Maybe because he hasn't done it in a game, but that's like playing 4 and 5. And if he knocks on a couple of them and shoot it, then maybe it is a different game. He's not going to be a Ivisic, and I get that. But I thought they really sagged off him. And again, to your point, maybe that had a lot to do with why KJ did what he did, because those two worked really, really well together.
Yeah, I think there's a part of that, and again. The challenge for Illinois is, if you look at it now, they're on a cadence of Sunday, Thursday, Sunday, Wednesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Saturday, Tuesday, Sunday, Friday. I mean, there's no breaks now. So they're going to have to find a way to rejuvenate and get themselves back into physical place where they're ready to go. And again, I think ultimately, you got. I thought they were going to get Trey White a little bit more involved than he was. But boy, there's something he and KJ play well together, and I thought he was gonna if I don't know. I thought they could have him do rim runs just because KJ tends to find him when he's open. I would have liked to seen that a little more. And I also would have liked, we talked about this, Brad, we wanted the zone earlier, and we wanted them to stay in the zone longer than they did. But
Mike, I want to comment.
My problem with the zone, well, I like the zone when they went to it. It confused them for a few possessions. But once they have a timeout and now they can adjust, they've set up a plan against the zone. It's not going to be effective because they don't practice. So, they haven't practiced. So you're going to give up. And so the scariest part about tonight, in the half court, they gave up more points in the zone than they did in man-to-man. I know that's shocking and hard to believe.
Well, the funny thing, Brad, was I think they confused Maryland at times because I couldn't figure out what their rotations were because it was clear that the guys hadn't played a lot of zone. So
and they didn't know either.
A little bit
you
random.
Had them confused.
Yeah, exactly.
Well,
maybe that's the way to do it. Just put 5 guys out there and have no idea what they're doing.
Well, you think about being in college, Brad, that they would know that. But you know what? When you guys talking about the ball sticking, Mike, you mentioned Trey White. Trey, to me, is a lot of one-on-one guy right now, and I think Kylan did a lot of that tonight as well. If Trey White wants to be effective, 2-man game, slip screens, go back door, make layups, and rebound. That's where he's effective at Illinois. That's what he's really good at. Getting the ball out there at the 3-point line on the perimeter, trying to go one-on-one between your legs behind your back, the ball is sticking. Same thing with Kylan. Kylan is really, really well when KJ has the ball, needs to make the layup. But when those two have the basketball, when it's sitting there, as Brad Underwood said, they're pounding nails, that's when the offense becomes stagnant. Those two guys, to me, they are able to score, but they're not effective when they have to have the basketball in their hand and nobody else is touching the ball.
Well, the other thing I would have, again, some of the people have been writing down, you can double team the post. And that's a dangerous game, but against Maryland, I would be willing to take that risk. We've also seen, though, that Maryland always has one guy who has the career night. Unfortunately, tonight they had 2. And they made Reese look a hell of a lot better.
Isn't Maryland's a really good 3-point shooting team overall.
Right.
Now, last year they couldn't shoot. I mean, so last year I didn't understand what LS should have posted. And that's the other thing about this. They lost to Maryland at home last year, too, about this time of year. I mean, it was like, probably the end of the world, the sky is falling. This was worse but Maryland is a better team this year because they do have guys who shoot. And I'm sorry, Derek Queen's a really good player. I mean, Reese is good, but Queen is really, really good. Like, he's effective both ends. I mean, he just dominated Illinois. I mean, there were a couple of times he had. I mean, I felt bad for Jake Davis trying to guard him. I mean, that poor guy. It wasn't fair. So, that was tough. But I think Maryland had some. That's why it's hard to post draft. But I thought there was a. Remember they went small there for a possession. They post draft. They doubled, rotated down, and then Maryland threw it out of bounds. I think they should have maybe tried more of that. But the problem being that then even if you get a stop, then you turn it over on the other end, and then they dunk and a run out. And it was like every time they get a stop and have a chance, they just make a bad play. And I think it just eventually, it just wears on you. And I think mentally they got worn down, and then they stopped doing the things that they wanted to do. And, I could tell, and then you don't have energy. Guys like White and Riley had to come out at times because they've been sick as well.
Yeah.
Didn't have any energy. So this is a team that just, they had a bad night. The good thing is, it's one game. And now you got to come back and win the next one. I mean, that's a must-win game, in my opinion, if they have any hope of doing what they want to do. They got to win that game at home against Northwestern, get healthy, and get ready to go.
Oh, hey, good. We got a really stupid comment, so I figured I'd put it up. You're lucky Ivisic didn't play. He can't check anyone either. It would have been a 30-point loss if he played. So it's good when you get the dumb people out. I mean, goodness gracious.
Like,
only a top. Go ahead, Brad.
Yeah, I mean, it's 7-1. Why would you want a 7-1 guy out there?
Yeah, and what's Illinois' defense? 12th best in the country.
Yeah, I mean, they came in. I think 11th or 12th in the nation defensively. So
yeah,
he's probably pretty important. But at the same
you can
time,
tell he was important. But I do think, like Ted and I were talking, I think Maryland and Michigan are the two scariest teams for the Illinois roster based on they have really good bigs and they're physical players. I think Maryland's actually more physical than the Michigan guys are. I think the Michigan guys are a little more
skilled,
refined from a basketball standpoint. Yep. But I think Maryland's
really skilled.
Yeah. Yeah, I think Maryland's a very tough team because you've got Queens kind of Kofi light.
Well, we're going to find out if he made a
Queen is.
He is. I mean, and Brad, you're right.
Northwestern's going to bring it.
Oh yeah. I mean, why would they not? I mean, Illinois is vulnerable at home. They lost to USC and they lost to Maryland. And the home court advantage, the Orange Crush, love you. You're great, but they've lost that home court advantage, and they just have to have another guy when somebody's down. And I'm always going to revert back to Trey White. He's that one guy that I was really looking forward to tonight. If Ivisic isn't going to score, if it's not going to be KJ, it's got to be, in my opinion, if it's going to be a starter, it's got to be Trey White. But again, if I'm coaching Illinois right now, I'm going back to the coaching staff. Here's what I'm saying. I got to get Draven, give Lawhorn some minutes, and I got to find ways he can score. Because I tell you what, you get him to slip screens the way you do with Kylan Barlow, he's either going to dunk and score or get fouled. He is really, really a freak of nature athletically. And he is, to me, when I look at Brad Underwood, that's a Brad Underwood player. He's just tough. And I want to see – I mean, he got 25 minutes, which is what I know was wanting to come into the season. But I'm just telling you, if other guys aren't producing, put their ass on the bench.
Well, and the bit, like I said, it goes back to there aren't as many guys as we'd like, and so they're down to a smaller roster, and you're going to have to play, and if a couple guys are sick, guys are going to have to step up, and next man up, and figure out a way to do it. We saw it on the football team last year. Injuries and people come in. And that's what's going to happen on the basketball team. And the other thing is that you're going to have to, whatever metrics you're looking at, you're going to have to decide how you're going to get Dre Gibbs Lawhorn a little bit more time, because I don't know what your metrics are that would tell you a guy that's playing the way he's played shouldn't get some minutes.
Well, here's the deal. I'm okay with the minutes, but the issue is there's guys out there who are, if they're struggling, don't take him out. Just let him play. Because if those guys who are struggling, if they've gotten 30 minutes, 32 minutes, give it to him until those guys figure it out. They've lost enough games right now. Those 3 losses, or I say 2.5, because, again, Northwestern was on the road. You've lost 2 games at home. Right now, it's about winning. It's not about, well, you were ranked higher coming out of high school. I don't give a damn about that. I could care less. If the kid's producing, I don't care if it's Booth. If it's Booth's out there and he's producing and Trey White's not, Mr. White, welcome. Bench again. You know, you don't want to give up on your players. I'm not saying it because Coach Underwood is definitely a player's coach. But I'm going to ride the hand. If it's like right now, at this part of the season, I'm trying to win at all costs.
Brad?
Yeah, no, I don't disagree. I think it's hard to figure out who's going to play minutes when you don't know who's healthy. I think today, I think that was part of it. I mean, I think the other thing about it is they have to get. This is a team they probably have depth at multiple. 2 5-men they probably thought were enough. But boy, it would be nice if they have had a third guy, and not even doesn't even have to be a true 5. And I think they were hoping that Booth could be that guy. Coming in, he played some 5 at Notre Dame. Maybe he could be that guy. He just hasn't maybe been as good as they had hoped, and that would give them that third big guy. And I think that's an issue that they're going to have to address because they have to have both Tommy and Merez, and that's why we've had limited opportunity to watch them play together because they don't really have that backup. We saw the Missouri game; we were wondering who's going to finish it when one fouled out and the other one had 4 fouls. It was like, what do we do if they get a 5th foul? Who plays? And so, it obviously was not conducive to winning, and they have more depth, with the guard. They have Draven Gibbs-Lahorn, and they have, Kasparis, and they have Kylan, multiple guys. Wing, you've got Will, you've got Trey, you've got, a couple guys there, Jake Davis, Ben Humrickhouse. I mean, but they don't really have maybe a physical 4 guy who can just go in there and play 4, play 5, whatever. They're kind of coming there, and that would be a really nice piece to have. I can't think of, even tonight, I'd rather have Ty Rogers out there. It would be great to have Ty Rogers available because he's physical, he can rebound, he can be able to get to the basket, draw some fouls, whatever. I think that it could have been active, and man, that energy would have been nice.
Yeah, I would love, like we talked before you got on, a little bit more money, and you keep Jeremiah Fears, you keep. You try to keep Amani Hansberry.
Well, I don't think you are keeping Jeremiah Fears if you have Kasparis Yakachovas. Yeah, so I mean, I don't think that was going to happen. He showcased himself well, and those guys sharing the ball wouldn't have probably been good for either one of them for their NBA draft prospects. So, yeah. But I tell you what, I think there are other guys they could have gotten that could have been, could have helped them though. It could have been productive.
I think we've learned a lesson over the last couple of years that Brad's got to press the NIL powers for a little bit more dollars because you need a couple more bodies. You get these times where players get injured, and you need somebody to be able to step in there. And I know it's tough because everybody wants playing time. That's the balance. That's why it's so hard. That's why it's so hard to be a coach nowadays because guys have NIL dollars that they can go after. They have playing time that they can go after. And boy, having a Hansberry to be that third big would be nice right now. And obviously I think Coleman Hawkins was, that era was kind of ended on both sides, but a Coleman Hawkins would have made this team a little bit more powerful. That's why I'm like, anybody wants to donate, I'm sure that people would be more than willing to accept that donation.
Yeah, but I kind of going back to that. I mean, you look at depth. I mean, imagine if Ivisic being out is basically the equivalent of like either Queen or Reese being out for Maryland.
Exactly.
I mean, that game. How much? I mean, they had 62 points on the paint. If one of those guys isn't there, they're not getting 62 points on the paint. Because it was those guys. And so, that would change the game completely. I mean, I thought, so that's where you just can't afford to have these injuries. But when you do have them, you better shoot it. I mean, if LA shoots 33% from 3 tonight, that's a different game too.
I agree.
I mean, and that's Those are little things that, you add some points up there and you're right in the game, or maybe you take a lead. So it's just, that's probably my biggest concern about this team right now. There's all these things. I think when they get healthy, they get everybody there, I think they're fine. They can play with about anybody, but you have to shoot it better than that, because there's going to be days when you don't get the offensive rebounds. You can't consistently keep shooting bad. I mean, they are a poor shooting team. They're one of the worst shooting teams in the Big Ten from 3-point range.
Yeah, and look, if you're going to play Maryland and you're not going to shoot the three very well, and you're going to turn over the ball a lot, not a lot of opportunities to win the game, and that doesn't matter if Ivisic is there or not.
Yeah, it wouldn't matter.
Yep. I mean, and that's why they've got to look themselves in the mirror and try to figure out, if you're not hitting the three, how are you going to score points? And that's what they have to figure out as a team, because at some point, I just think I mean, it's nice when you can say, well, we'll shoot our way out of it. But against a team like Maryland, you're going to shoot your way into a loss, because they're going to get their fair share of the boards. And, you got to, I don't know, you got to find a way to score. And that's Maryland, does a really good job of defending the three. And then when you go up against those two in the paint, they make you earn your layups. I mean, they're a tough team that I think if they had a better coach would probably have a better record.
Yeah, I would. Well, he did a good job tonight, I guess.
Yeah, no. I mean, he did a fine job tonight, but I mean, that Maryland team.
They have a lot of talent on that team. There's no question. They really do. I think Queen's really good. He really impressed me tonight with what he did and the way he was able to deck it and take it to people at hoop. He can't shoot it yet, but he's got a lot of talent, a lot of potential for sure. I just don't. But I do think Illinois just they got to get healthy, and they got to start figuring out their shooting. And I've never seen, I don't know, I guess I'm crazy, but I've never seen a team shoot this poorly for this long. I mean, they're consistently bad at shooting. And for a team that's attempting to get threes as well, I mean, that's their game, and they're really bad at it. So it's one of those things, but I don't know that they're conditioned where they can suddenly play a different way. You know what I mean? Like, they don't have the guys, like, they don't have good post-up scores, so they can't play that way. They don't have guys that are, when Ivisic is around, you got a good passer out of the 5 spot, so you can get some back cuts and things like that, but they don't have guys that are maybe great at that either. I mean, I think Jonas is a, tremendous passer when he just makes doesn't get too fancy, same with Boswell, but man, I don't know how they score if they can't shoot threes and consistently. And I think you got to be able to shoot a little better than they have, because we talk about shooting threes consistently, but they shoot threes. It's not even inconsistent with 3-point shooting. They just shoot it poorly about every game. Every once in a while, they have an aberration against Arkansas and Oregon.
The interesting thing, Brad, is that they're averaging 86.8 points a game, which is the highest per game average in 59 years. And they're on pace to have the number 4 scoring offense in the history of the school. And yet it makes you wonder what they could do if they were able to turn on that consistency from the field, which they haven't had as of yet.
One of the things that they do, they shoot free throws really well.
What do you think about? Go ahead.
I'm sorry, they're a good free throw shooting team. But Brad, here's my thing. You're right. They're not a good 3-point shooting team, and we can pretend, and all the color analysts can say, "Oh my gosh, they want to jack up a bunch of threes." I'm gonna limit some of those guys shooting threes because they're not good at it. Until those percentages start to rise, I'm not just going, because to me, when you miss those and you don't get the offensive rebound, that's a turnover to me. That's a waste of possession. I would limit. They were 6 for 28 tonight, which we've said a number of times, 21%. And I don't know and I'm going to look. I'm going to do some research before I go to bed. When was the last time they shot 35 to 38% from 3? And teams are going to just start hell. I mean, the coach can say they're a good 3-point shooting team, but I'm going to let them chuck it. So if you're going to let them chuck it and they're not going to make them, that's a disadvantage to you. So unless they start making shots, or I'm just going to secretly tell guys, listen, I'm not telling you not to shoot when you're open, but you got to go between your legs, behind your back, and do a step back 3, or coming down, or 4-on-5, jacking up a 3. That's not your game anymore right now. There's nothing wrong with telling a player that, because there are some guys, and the stats are available to anybody, who are shooting 20% from. Why shoot them? You're not good at them right now. And hell, what have you played? 20 games so far. Quit chalking them if they're not going to go in.
Yeah, no, I disagree. By the way, I thought it was interesting, Underwood's comments, real quick, I just want to talk about them, about the Illinois last in the Big Ten in free throw rate. They were first in the Big Ten. He mentioned this. They were first in the Big Ten after their non-conference schedule. They shot free throws against all the SEC teams. Then they get to the Big Ten, and suddenly nothing is. They don't go to the line. So I thought that was interesting. Like, and he says he's talked to Big Ten officials. He can't explain it. What's changed? Why are they not fouled? So I thought that was interesting. I can tell he's definitely frustrated about, the way games have been officiated. And I think especially these last two games have really been a struggle. Overall, man, we are talking about, we had the Purdue game, we had the Northwestern game the other day. All we're talking about is, it seems like we're talking a lot about officials and in the Big Ten. And I think it's intriguing that maybe the Big Ten needs to reevaluate the things they're doing and the way they're doing things.
Well, the Big Ten officials, they had, in my opinion, they had no effect on tonight's game. But I do think that if I'm the Big Ten and I want to get further in the NCAA tournament, I'm going to give my refs the same instructions that the officiating supervisor in the tournament gives, so that my teams are better prepared for that. And I would argue that when you're looking back now, granted, it's a one-game single elimination, so I think the Big Ten's had like 7 teams in the last 25 years that made it to the final, I believe. I'd have to go back and check that, but the last team that was able to cash it in was Michigan State in 2000. So if you want to change that around, it's kind of like what happened in football, where they had to say, okay, if we want to start winning some more titles, you're going to have to figure out how to out SEC the SEC, and they've kind of stacked the players that way. Right now, your best players, if you look at the rankings, if you're ranking players, rivals, on 3, whoever, the majority of the best players are going to the SEC, and then you throw in, North Carolina, Duke, and Kansas, and some of the Big 12. And we all know that the players will tell us at AAU they don't necessarily want to play in the Big Ten. I think so. I'd like to see the games look more similar to what you have in the NCAA tournament. But tonight it was just one team was played a lot better than the other one.
Yeah, I agree. So here's my question about that. We say that the players went to other places. Am I crazy? Are 3 of the top 5 picks all in the Big Ten?
They are this year.
Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, but yet, I still see games that are grinders and people beating the crap out of each other, and it's just not, there's no flow. So even with, you talk about, all the, Queen's also a first-round draft pick. She got a lot of guys I think there's a lot of Big Ten guys Wolf has moved up into the first round. I think there's a lot of guys in the Big Ten who are, going to be good high draft picks and get drafted. So the talent is there if you let them play basketball.
Oh, I totally agree. Yeah, I totally agree. But you're gonna, like I said, we watch refs who ref in the Big Ten, and then they go ref an ACC or an SEC game, and they're a totally different ref. For those people who don't know any college refs, I've interviewed them. You guys know them. They'll tell you they do what the supervisor of the league tells them to do in terms of style of how you call a game. And they're also all deathly terrified of the legendary coaches in a league making a phone call saying this guy sucks, because you'll have a hard time getting it. So, you could see why refs gave Bob Knight and Gene Cady calls for years, even though they treated the refs like dirt, because they didn't want Bob Knight, who was going to pick up a phone and, try to get somebody fired with no sense of guilt because he was mad about a call. But I do think, whatever instructions are out there, I would love to see the Big Ten supervisor just photocopy those. And that's how we want our games called, so that the Big Ten teams are used to that versus going in to the tournament and having to adjust what's a foul and what's not. I mean, if I was a Big Ten commissioner, I would want to maximize our success in the tournament so we could make more money. It's not for any altruistic thing, I just want to make more money out of it.
Yep, I agree.
So that's kind of how I would look at it. Kat, any final thoughts?
Another bad loss at home. I don't care how good Maryland is. Illinois is a better team, but not again tonight. And I guess I should quit saying that, because if they're a better team, they win the games. They have 2 bad losses at home to me. They can't lose another game at home. They need to beat somebody on the road. I don't know what their schedule looks like. I'm not going to look at it right now. They need to get healthy again. That's the one thing Coach Underwood did mention. And again, Ivisic did. He looks really, really sick tonight. So hopefully they can get healthy again, get this team rolling, be the team that everybody in the country thinks that they're supposed to be, and just move on and start winning and doing what they're supposed to do. That's my 2 cents. And then the last thing is, I don't care what country you're from, if you're from Mars, wherever, play the guys who are going to give you the best chance to win at this point in the season right now. You know what you got, regardless of who it is, whether it's Merez, Kerry Booth, Draymond Gibbs, Longhorn. Ride the guys that are playing well, and then the next game you go back to your normal routine, so be it. But right now, that's my 2 cents.
Brad?
Yeah, I mean, I just think there's a lot of basketball left. Teams have almost every team that isn't like crazy good is going to have down periods where they're going to struggle, and they're going to have times where they're not good. And so that, I think that, Illinois is in that right now. They got to find a way to grind through it, battle, fight, scrap, get a win on Sunday, and go from there. And the reality is, still a lot of basketball left to be played. Like I said, last year's team lost to Maryland, a bad Maryland team last year, beat Illinois by 9 at the State Farm Center. So, and Maryland, sometimes, we've talked about this before, Maryland has just kind of owned Illinois since Underwood got it, just like Illinois owned Michigan. On the other hand, it's been the opposite with Maryland. So I wonder, you wonder if maybe there is something about that where some matchups are just bad for you. So, but now they have to find a way to win at home against Northwestern. If you remember last year, they were kind of in a struggle bus. Terrence Shannon went out, and they just came out and just dominated Northwestern at home. So you hope that they can do that again. They gotta get some energy, play with some energy, come out and take care of the Wildcats on Sunday, and kind of right the ship a little bit, and you'll feel a lot better heading into the road game in Nebraska.
Yeah, they're going to have to. I mean, they're going to have to play significantly better over the course of the next 2 weeks, because if you start sliding down the seed poll, then you end up having to face the UConns of the world for looking at last year earlier in the tournament, and you got nobody to blame but yourself. So they're going to need to figure out what they need to do to score better. They're going to need to figure out how you take care of the ball a little better. And defensively, I think they're fine when they're at full strength. But you got to figure out a game plan. And I'm not certain you can panic too much over Maryland or Michigan, because they're built so much different than every team in the Big Ten, and they're a tough matchup. But in the end, if you want to be a three-point shooting team and you're going to shoot 21% from the 3-point, you're not really going to have much success. So with that, folks, go ahead and take a look at following us on the IlliniGuys.com YouTube channel. You can also join IlliniGuys.com and subscribe, $99 a year. You'll have the opportunity to get all the background information that we don't put on here, the recruiting information, et cetera, that we glean from people around the program, people in the program, people recruited by the program in football and basketball. We'd love to have you on board with that as well. And of course, anytime you can share us with social media, we greatly appreciate that. We will be back on Sunday when the Illini go up against a Northwestern team that is looking to sweep them. Luckily for the Illini, they haven't reached Indiana-like record against Northwestern, but you don't want to give Chris Collins and his team an opportunity to get another one up on you. So this is a big game for Illinois on Sunday. Make sure you tune in. That we will have a halftime show and a post-game show there as well. In the end, folks, we will see you then. Until then, go Illini.